Gaming has always had a huge influence on my life. At a very young age, I was introduced to it. The first thing that I can really remember is a Super Nintendo playing Super Mario World, or maybe even a Nintendo 64 playing Pokemon Stadium. Being a late 90s slash early 2000s kid, there have just been so many influential games that have been a part of my life. And something that I've really always liked are JRPGs, pretty much my whole life. But there are certain ones that just have a sense of mysticism about them. Games like Chrono Trigger have had just such a huge influence, and it was such a big thing that came to the West. Another big game, Ocarina of Time, this journey into the 3D world and what was really possible at the time. But those two games were ones that I really missed growing up. And a third one that we're talking about here today is Final Fantasy VII. The first time I heard of Final Fantasy VII, I was watching a Smosh Games YouTube video where they were talking about their greatest accomplishments in gaming. And Lasercorn spoke up about how he beat Emerald Weapon with Kate Sith's Limit Break.
After you beat Sephiroth, who by the way wasn't even that tough, there is still 2 bosses left in the world, 2 giant bosses, and you don't see games do that these days. I was just exploring the world in my submarine one day, and I didn't even really mean to fight him. I ran into it, and I thought I'd take a crack at taking down Emerald Weapon, this giant green undersea Kraken Leviathan monster. But I had Kate Sith with me, and Kate Sith has one limit break that it's a slot machine, and if it comes up, I'm not sure what, it was 7s or skulls or something, but if you get 3 of something, you instantly destroy whoever you're facing. But it comes up against freaking Emerald Weapon, and I'm like, what is that? What does that one do? And it's like, it was something that looked scary. I'm like, does that instantly kill me? And then Emerald Weapon just starts shaking, and he's like, "Bruh." And I'm like, did I just kill Emerald Weapon?
Now that is literally all Greek to me. I have no idea what that means, at the time anyway. But time and time again, I would hear about Cloud and the Buster Sword and Sephiroth, and eventually I got around to playing Kingdom Hearts when I was younger, and that was the first time I saw some of those characters. I'm like, who are these cool characters in this Disney game? To me, they were just some other characters. There was no connection for me at the time. But now, I get it. And it's just, I can't believe that I missed this one growing up. The first wave of consoles that I really had growing up were the GameCube, the Game Boy Advance. I eventually owned a Nintendo 64. The PlayStation 1 was one that I never had. I didn't get around to it. I went straight to a PlayStation 2. So Final Fantasy VII, 8, 9, Chrono Cross, there's just so many beautiful hidden gems, at least hidden to me, that I have still yet to experience to this day, just because I wasn't around at that time. But now, I had that chance. Fast forward a few years after I found that Smosh Games YouTube video, and I got a PS3. And I saw Final Fantasy VII on the store, and I was like, you know what? We got to see what this is all about. But then I only proceeded to play it for a couple of hours. And I don't know, it just wasn't my cup of tea. And then I just never went back to it. At the time, I was deep into my Xbox 360 era. So Final Fantasy VII just kinda sat on the shelf. Well, the digital shelf, that is. I was playing Call of Duty, Halo, all kinds of multiplayer games with my friends at the time. Single player games as a whole just kind of fell off. And I really hate that I let that happen. There were so many great games that I would kind of pick up, just play through the story and just call it there. I wouldn't really dive into them. And I'm glad that I kind of fell back in love with these single player games again as I got older. We fast forward again a few more years, and now I've got a Nintendo Switch. It's the end of high school, and I'm into college. And one day, it was the holidays, and I saw it again. It was Final Fantasy VII on sale on the Switch. We're talking like $4 or $5. How could I say no at this point? Why would I say no at this point? And I was like, you know what? It's finally time. we're gonna dive in. Or so I thought. I started playing it on and off during the holidays, and once again, I was only a few hours into this playthrough. Some of this definitely stuck with me from the first time I had played it on my PS3 back in the day, which I had gotten rid of, which is why I had to buy it again, but that's besides the point. Anywho, I was enjoying it somewhat, but at the time, I had just started a new job. I was moving into a new apartment with my girlfriend. It was just all this life stuff was happening all at once. Christmas had just come and gone. I mean, it was just, life was crazy. And it was hard to dive into a JRPG when life was getting that crazy. So I'd play for a bit, stop, play for a bit, stop. And finally I was like, you know what? We're playing. And I started to get that fun feeling in my system. Like, okay, I'm starting to see the beauty here. I'm not going to go in depth on every single aspect of every single disc and every single story beat of this game, but let me tell you, this is just one that you have to experience for yourself. Midgar truly felt like an atmosphere that you just didn't want to be a part of. You knew something was wrong, and the developers just made it feel so devastating. But at the same time, you just needed to do something about what was going on there. And this is where we have Cloud, Tifa, and Barret, and we're really going to make our mark here. Along the way, a lot of story beats happen. And again, I won't spoil them, but there's one very early on that hooks you. And then eventually you're going to meet another party member, Red 13. And slowly but surely, you just keep getting more and more members to your party throughout the game. Let's stick with Disc 1. Midgar alone is ridiculous. I know I said I wouldn't spoil anything, but high level, it starts with this bombing mission, and immediately you're just sucked into it. And I remember thinking, okay, this is kind of cool, but I was like, alright, this isn't going to go anywhere crazy, right? I couldn't have been more wrong. At this point, you start to meet Avalanche, you get your party members, like I said, Barret, Tifa, and my personal favorite, Aerith. And then the weird thing is, and it's something you don't even realize, the game slowly builds this emotional attachment to everyone. Barret's the loud, proud, intense leader. Tifa is the emotional connection for the three main party members. And then Aerith is, there's just something different about her. She is in a category of her own. And another one in a category of their own is Cloud. Something's off, but you just can't quite explain it. As I mentioned earlier, as you make your way throughout Midgar, you eventually have a run-in with the Avalanche, and you make your way up this tower. And there is where you find these experiments and where you find a new party member in Red 13. I thought he was really cool. I liked this experiment, and, you know, he's gonna have some vendetta against, you know, the Avalanche, and you just expect him to be some hateful thing. But you come to learn, he's just a kid. Well, at least for his species, he's just a kid. And then, as you finally leave Midgar, things really start to change. And unbeknownst to me, I was in for a wild ride. It was actually at this point that I dropped the game again for a little bit. That's when the holidays hit and I was moving and getting a new job. So I can't believe I dropped it again. So this is like the second, third time that I've dropped the game. Not in a bad way. In my own stupid way is the reason why I dropped it. But it was time to get back to it. So I was going on a trip with my mom and my girlfriend, and I told myself, all right, it's time to finish this. I wanted to clear out my backlog starting at the beginning of this year, and this was one that was at the top of the list. I just needed to do it. I figured there's literally no better travel device than the Switch. You can put it on the TV if you want to bring your docking station. You can play it on the plane, no problem. And that's what I did. We had a nice long direct flight. We would kind of chill in the morning or at night. So I could just kind of grind away for, like an hour or two at a time and just get a lot done. And the thing that I really loved about the Switch version was the speed up function, being able to heal your whole characters if you wanted to avoid enemies and just focus on the story. I loved all of that. I think it made an already amazing experience an even better one. I don't think that I've ever experienced a game quite like this in my life. And the fact that they did actually include these elements such as speed up or being able to heal to definitely help with grinding, you really did not need to grind in this game, I felt. There were times where I was like, okay, like when I first left Midgar, I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to grind probably, because I remember having a little difficulty on one of the boss fights at the end of the Midgar section. And I was wrong. I really didn't need to. I was very over leveled for a little while and I just stopped. I said, you know what? We're just gonna play the game as is. If we get a wild encounter along the way, so be it. If not, then it is what it is. We're just gonna let the story play out and see what happens. I remember as I left Midgar, I had this feeling, we went from this tight, almost claustrophobic experience to this breathtaking open world. And you might be thinking, PlayStation 1 open world breathtaking? What's this guy talking about? In honesty, like the hand-drawn backgrounds that you would get, maybe it's the nostalgia talking, but how can I be nostalgic for a game I never played for? Am I just yearning for something so simple, yet so elegant? And I think that's what Final Fantasy VII really is. It's not this super complex, complicated thing. It's not a super hard game, but it's not super easy either. The story is magnificent. It hit in ways that I really didn't expect it to hit. So Disc 1 happens, and you get to really traverse the world. You get these vehicles, you get to explore further and further along the way, and you get to learn the story of your characters. You get some optional ones along the way as well, and I actually got them both when I first could. I really didn't know that they were going to be optional at the time. I thought they just happened, and after I played the game and I went back and people were like, oh, Vincent, for example, he was a main staple in my party, and he was a character that apparently was optional, and I thought his story was really interesting and how it tied in. And maybe it's just the cool shonen anime, antagonist vibe he kind of gave off, but I just loved having him. Something that these old JRPGs did was have multiple discs, and I know I'd kind of mentioned it earlier, discs 1, 2, and 3. Well, I wasn't really aware that's how the game was separated at the time. I didn't know how this really worked. So, we're outside Midgar. I spent a good time there. We've explored the world. I'm thinking, okay, we're probably a good chunk of the way through. And eventually, we have a run-in with our main antagonist, Sephiroth. And he is the cause of, I think, many, many tears. Not only in the Kingdom Hearts boss fight that you can fight him in, but the impact that he has on this story and the impact that he has on some of our party members. One in particular. As I mentioned, there are certain characters that I just absolutely loved and I had a strong connection with. And I won't go into spoiler territory, as I've kind of mentioned earlier, but the death of a certain character has been a death I've known about for a very long time. That was something that was spoiled for me so long ago. I think I saw something talking about the saddest video game deaths. I knew this was coming. I just didn't know when. I figured if someone's gonna die, it's gonna be the end of the game. I was so wrong. When you get to the end of Disc 1, that's when the emotions hit their high. This is the moment I already knew about for years. I just didn't know when it happened. So while I knew it was going to come the whole time, and I was kind of bracing for it, it came when I least expected it. And it hit so hard. The in-game cutscene that we get when this moment happens when the music hits too, I was floored. I was sitting on the couch with my girlfriend. My jaw dropped, and I'm just trying to process everything that happened. I almost cried, and I don't know if I've ever cried at a video game before. And I knew this was going to happen. And she looks at me, and I'm just like, what's happening? I can't believe this happened. And she goes, you need to go kill that guy right now. Which I thought was so funny because my girlfriend's not into video games at all. I had asked her, I was like, yeah, normally, I'll go play in my little gaming office room. But I was like, I want to play this on the big screen. Like when you were a kid, I was like, yeah, let's play this on the big screen, get cozy on the couch. Like, let's have a good time. And the fact that we were both floored, I was so surprised at my own reaction. Again, the crazy part is, I had been spoiled on this moment for years, but knowing it didn't matter. It absolutely destroyed me. And then we get to go into disc 2. And again, this was something I wasn't expecting. That emotional moment ends with end of disc 1. Would you like to continue? And I was like, what? That's just the end of disc 1? I figured, okay, we're 2/3 of the way through the game now. And in a sense, you kind of are. Disc 2 really expands the world and gives you the freedom that you really enjoy. But I think that the way I went about it, I would do again. After that moment, I was really invested in what was going to happen with the stories. The world opens up, and it's not just a story. It's a journey. And I think that is somewhat of a regret on my end, is not fully exploring it until more towards the end of the game. But I did love it. You're traveling everywhere. You're dealing with that emotional burden now. And, you're chasing leads and just everything feels heavier. The game didn't let you breathe too long before reminding you what is really happening here. And I think that this is also where a lot of the characters really lock in. They don't feel like party members now. They feel like people that you've been on a journey with, not only physically, but emotionally. Barrett's more grounded in his purpose. Tifa's much more emotionally complex. And Aerith is just more important in a way that I never would have fully understood. You really get to explore the backgrounds of a lot of these characters and kind of how their story ties in. Kate Sith, I think, is a character I was not a huge fan of. Same thing for Yuffie. That's just me, though. I wasn't a huge fan of their stories and how they tied in. Other than that, I absolutely love this cast of characters. Sid is hilarious. He's the grumpy old man, but he's also the comedic relief that you really need in a story like this. As deep as it is, he's kind of a reminder that you also gotta look at every aspect. Not everything's going to be sad. You're going to be angry too. Cloud's nonchalant attitude at times, Barrett being loud, Tifa, feeling the emotion of love that she has for Cloud. I think that a lot of these characters are a great representation of how you deal with an emotional journey. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what this game is about. And after that big moment, there's just this constant feeling of we're still moving forward as a family, but we're not the same family anymore. Once we hit the climax, the action just is nonstop. I feel like it is a non-stop rush towards the end of this game. And again, you can take the breaks with all the different pieces of side content that there are. You can do chocobo racing, you can do the golden saucer mini games, some that I did so I could get some pretty cool stuff. Like I said, I like to grind, so I kind of did at times when I didn't really need to, but that's besides the point. I think that the game is fantastic because it opens up to however you want to do it. I grinded ever so slightly towards the end of the game because I just wanted to see how this story finally unfolds. And by disc 3, it kind of feels like everything's finally winding down. Not in a rushed way though, but in a this is the end of something big kind of way. And I knew it was coming to an end, but I didn't want it to stop. And once you realize that you're approaching that final stretch, everything just starts to connect and hit differently. At this point, you've just grown to love this cast of characters that you're with. You get a better understanding of their importance on the story and on the world as a whole. Cloud's a much deeper character than you ever would have thought. The love that him and Tifa have for each other, I'm a sucker for rom-coms, but I just absolutely love their dynamic and their relationship in this game. The other characters, there were some I didn't use, but I just loved that they were still there. And then the ending, I did not expect it to go the way that it really did. We're not going to spoil anything, but what I can say is it made my heart so warm, and I was so happy. And I just sat there and I smiled. I didn't have words to describe how I felt, and I still don't really think I do. But there was just an overall appreciation for this game. And when I finished it, I just sat there. I didn't look up guides. I didn't look up certain builds. I didn't care about optimizing anything. I didn't care about the post-game content. Not saying that it's bad, just in that moment, I didn't care. I just sat there and I processed everything, and I get it. I finally understood why people call this game a masterpiece. It's not only the story, it's not only the moments, it's the fact that it stays with you. Like I mentioned, the post-game has so much that you can do. Like the chocobo racing that I mentioned, there's certain items that you can get, there are secret bosses that you can fight, and like I mentioned, there's the Emerald Weapon boss fight, and that is a secret boss fight that I'm still gonna go back and get just to really make my childhood self proud. For now, I'm just so glad that I finally got to experience what so many people have called one of the greatest games of all time. If you've never played Final Fantasy VII, I genuinely can't recommend it enough. And if you have, I get it now. I'm so glad that I got to share this with you all. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in our next one.